Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm your host, Diane Gibbs, and I am joined, I can't wait to talk to him, with y'all, Joe Bosack, and he's in Pennsylvania. But just so you know, today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial if you go to www.audibletrial.com/design recharge. There's over 180,000, I always mess up on that. Let's just call them books. Over 180,000 books to choose from for your iPhone, Android, or wherever you get your MP3s. So, okay, we're jumping in. And today is episode 291. So you can always find the show notes at rechargingyou.com/291. And we're going to jump into our interview with Joe. I guess that's combining both Joe and Bosack. So sorry about that. I know I know your name. Anyway, I'm glad to have y'all all here live, and we're just going to jump in. So Joe, we usually start off the time with a little bit like a 5-10 minute like intro of a little bit of your background. Like, did you go to design school and then you started working in the NHL? Can you kind of give them a little bit of the background and then how long you worked for someone and then for yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is I really haven't had a regular job for that many years. I went to art school in Philadelphia, Temple University's Tyler School of Art. Great place. I mean, just a fantastic experience there. I entered art school. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I was going to be a graphic designer, if I was going to be an animator, if I was going to do something else. I kind of really went into it with a fairly open mind, ended up majoring in graphic design. I graduated in 1994, and I ended up at the Art Directors Club in New York. They have this thing that they do for graduating seniors, and they're there to review your portfolio. And they're not there to give you a job. They're there to sort of like give you some advice on your portfolio. And the people that show up for this thing are not only graduating seniors, but art directors from all over town. So they had an art director from Sony Records there, and from another publication like Time Magazine or something like that. And while I was there, I met David Haney. And David Haney was brand new at the National Hockey League. He was their director of creative services. And he was there, reviewed my portfolio, and he and I stayed in touch. And a few months later, he ended up hiring me. So I packed up everything I had, which, you're a college senior, you don't have much. So I packed up everything I had, moved to New York City, and I worked at the National Hockey League in their creative services department.
So you must have made a pretty good impression was this like a speed dating kind of thing where you have 20 minutes with one person, or did you just have David Haney?
Nope, you got it exactly right. It's like speed dating where you've got 20 minutes with this person, 20 minutes with that person, and you just sort of show them your portfolio. They give you a few tidbits, a little bit of advice, and you move on to the next table.
Right.
So anyway, I worked at the NHL for 2 years and worked on some great projects while I was there. And that was really my introduction to graphic design in sports. Prior to this, I didn't know that you could work in sports as a graphic designer. I thought that they had big agencies and the agencies got the work, and there was nothing for a guy like me who was interested in that sort of stuff to sort of find his way into that world. So I worked there for only 2 years, and then in 1996, I left, and I took a job at Fila, the sneaker company. Mm-hmm. I worked at Fila for 2 years, and I was 25 years old. I thought, better get to getting. So I started my own business in 1998, and here I am. So 21 years later, here we are.
So were you married at that point?
No.
I know these are sort of personal questions, but
No, you listen, I'm an open book. You can ask me anything.
Okay,
I wasn't married at that point, no.
So at 20, were you dating your wife?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So you had maybe thoughts that she, I don't know, maybe, but you thought you would get married, maybe not to her, but to someone at that point?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so, because I'm trying to kind of get the mindset, because honestly, we talked about this a little bit. It's a little bit easier to kind of go all out when you're super young and you don't have a lot of, you don't have a house and you don't have kids and you don't have all these other things that are holding you back. and just be like, hey, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, I'll just get a job. Is that kind of your mindset or what?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I mean, my mindset was, this is something I wanted to do. This is something that I always thought, like as a student, and even when I graduated, that that was the career path that I wanted to do. I wanted to be out on my own, row my own boat, as it were. And I figured what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll go get a job. So I basically banked enough money. I had $5,000 in the bank. I banked enough money so that I could survive rent and everything else for 3 months. And I figured after 3 months, if it didn't work out, then I still had my portfolio. I could shop it around, and I still knew lots of people in New York City in that world, and figured I'd just go get a job.
So so you had a 3-month cushion, but did you have a goal? Like you knew you could probably scrape by. Did you have like, hey, I'm going to kind of reevaluate? I mean, I don't know any 25-year-old that may be doing this, but like, hey, I'm going to reevaluate when I'm 30 and see if this thing is working for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, my goal was to just stay in business. That was it. Like I didn't really think much further than that 3 months. All I knew is that when I was at Fila, I sort of started to get away from the work that I really loved to do, which was identity design in sports. So that's what I knew I wanted to do. So I knew I wanted to do that, and I figured, why not? Like, why not just go after it?
All right. So you go after it, and then you are continuing to go after it, and you actually went after it for a very long time on your own.
Yeah.
But one of the things is that because I asked you this, and I'm going to ask you this again. All your, like in the beginning, were you doing only sports, or did you kind of like you paid the bills and you did the sports things that you wanted, or you did identities that you wanted, and then you kind of just geared more and more towards those things? Or you also had other, like later on, you and your wife have other, I mean, you're both entrepreneurs. She's a chiropractor. You have your own business. Well, let's start with this question.
Yeah.
I know I'm all over the place.
Well, I wasn't actively pursuing things outside of sports. I was only looking for stuff in sports. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't, pull a job here or there from wherever that would help pay the bills. I used to do like T-shirt. I was at Fila. So at Fila, we did lots of apparel design and stuff like that. So I was doing T-shirts for a company in Philadelphia, but that was still sports related. It was a sports brand that I was working for. So, but I didn't actually pursue jobs that were outside of the sports world. I was really looking for team identity. I was looking for league identity, special event, those kinds of things. That's what I was really out there kind of hustling for.
Did you have a mentor at this point?
No, not at that point. No, not at that point.
Did anybody give you advice?
David Haney was like he and I we were in communication, I guess, when I first started out, but not as much as we were before. But he was and is still my main influencer, my main mentor, no doubt about it. But I don't think that he and I were really like in regular communication when I started. I think I was just kind of out there, So
did anybody say, hey, Joe, like this is ballsy? Or did your girlfriend, which is now your wife, did she say anything? Or were they like, hey, you can do this?
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, it was, I don't think anybody ever told me it was ballsy, or if anybody ever told me that it was a crazy idea, because it really was a crazy idea. I mean, you're trying to break into this business that's like really hard to get into. But it was working, I mean, my first day in my office, the first thing I did was pull out my Rolodex. Remember those things? And I started like calling people that I knew, like old friends of mine at the NHL. And I had a friend there, Brendan McQuillan. I still work with him today. And he said to me, hey, you should call the East Coast Hockey League. I know this guy over there, Jason Siegel. You should call him and see if he can see if he has anything for you. Maybe he has a project or something like that. So my first day in my office, I got my cup of coffee, 9 a.m., and I make this phone call to the East Coast faculty. And I launch into my spiel, and I tell Jason that, hey, Brendan McQuillan told me to give you a call. This is the work that I'm doing. These are the things that I've done. He thought that you might be interested in meeting with me, and maybe there's some opportunities to do some work together. And the phone was silent. It was dead silent. And he goes to me, Brendan McQuillan, that ain't gonna get you anywhere. That's what he said. And I was literally, I could feel myself just shrinking in my chair, you know? But I mean, he was just joking with me. I mean, he was, he was just having some fun with me. And he ended up, he's like, hey, why don't you come up here on Wednesday? We'll sit down, we'll have lunch. So I went up there like a couple days later. They were in Princeton, New Jersey. I was living in New Hope, Pennsylvania at the time. And I drove up there, and he looked at my portfolio and he gave me a job. So, I mean, was it a crazy idea to get started? Probably. Was it ballsy? Maybe. But nobody ever told me that because it was working, you know. I was making money. I was doing work that I liked. So, yeah.
So being young and being new, you may not have been part of those contracts and that side of it at some of these other companies. How were you able to, how did you learn, or did you just learn through experience? Like, hey, I'm going to price this at blank. Yeah. And then next time you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't even blink at that. Like how, because I think that is the business part of design that holds so many people back from doing what you did, is going out on your own. It could be that you were basing it on what your needs were, like, which I don't think probably lasted very long because do you know what I mean? Like, but how did you learn that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, when I first started out, it was simply an hourly rate for me. So what
Which
I would
is
do,
for most people, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like that anymore. Like I don't price projects like that anymore. But for me, what I would do is I would say, okay, here's this project, this opportunity. I think it's going to take me X number of hours to complete this. I always probably underestimated, right? It always took me a lot longer. And this is my hourly rate, multiply that together, and that's how I came up with my pricing structure. I still think, Diane, that's a good way for young designers
to
price their work.
It is.
To figure out your value, all right? What is that? Is it X dollars an hour? And then take your best guess at what you think it's going to take to create this thing that you're hired to do, and then apply it.
Right. So, okay. So, and when, at what point did you start? Because you work, one of your strengths, I think, is, well, you have a few superpowers, but two of them that I kind of talked about in the promos was, one, your ability to listen and to come in kind of a clean sponge. But then the one was also sharing, like going in and being like, hey, you know what? TJ's really good at this. I'm going to bring TJ in on this project. And that you're not, you're so humble. You're not cocky. You've done like big schools and big projects, but you're so easy to talk to, and that you really want to, like, collaboration is where is like this underlying fire in your belly that makes you stronger, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think collaboration is important. You know, you're not going to be the best at everything. And for me, collaboration is all about the what ifs. You know, I want to work with other people. I'll see their work and I'll say, I want to work with that person. What's going to happen? You know, how is this going to, how can we both kind of grow from this? And, you know, there's always been, I think, in the design community, people sort of shelter their pride of authorship, right? Everybody wants to sort of be out there in front of the work. And that's just never been that big of a deal to me. It's always been about doing the best possible work that I can do. And if somebody out there is better than I am at this, and there's a lot of people out there that are better than I am at this, I want to work with them. You know, I want to work with them. It's just there's something just energizing about that whole thing. You know.
So this is one thing I asked you. I always think, you know, I asked Britt Davis this too, and she didn't ever even play sports. But so did you play sports as a kid?
As a kid, I mean, as much as a kid does, but I wasn't an athlete in high school or anything like that. I always loved sports. I love following sports. I love my local teams. I'm a Philly guy, so I mean, all of my Philadelphia teams, I followed those. But no, I wasn't really that much of an athlete.
So I wonder, this is what I think with this, because I also was not much of an athlete. I did play soccer all through like 5 years old till 18, but I knew where my spot was. It was on the bench. And I was absolutely fine with that because I knew I was a better encourager than I was out there. Like my team went to state. It wasn't because I was on the field. So I always think knowing that has helped me kind of been able to realize that I'm not the star player. I mean, although I think you're pretty star quality there, Joe, but I think that has to be humility. I also think looking and seeing that maybe person A has some characteristics or does things that maybe you don't have, and you can bring them on, and you're not it doesn't affect your confidence, right? It actually because you know who you are and that you aren't maybe the best at this whatever person A does. I think it's been a great blessing that I wasn't a great athlete, that I wasn't top in my game because I was so familiar with failure,
Sure. No, I get that. Yeah, I get that. I think, for me, it's like a collaboration you not only do you get the benefit from the other person you're collaborating with or the other people that you're collaborating with, but you get this synergy that happens where everything that they do affects the things that you do, and the things that you're doing affects the things that they're doing, and it just kind of elevates the whole project. I've always been a firm believer in finding the right people for the job, and sometimes look, there's plenty of projects that I do where it's just I'm on my own, right? But then there are those opportunities where the project's bigger. Maybe the budget's a little bit bigger, or maybe the skill set is just a little bit different than what I can apply competently. So in those instances, I think that's really where the power of collaboration, or the idea of collaboration, really kind of excels. And you have to be a little bit. You have to open up a little bit. You have to sort of be confident enough to say, okay. This is not going to be all me. It's going to be a little bit of all of these folks that are in there. There's a little bit of humility that has to happen in that whole process, And as my friend Paul Carew tells me, and I've sort of adopted it as my mantra, humility is the new black. And I think it's true. I think it's true. It's something that you don't really see a whole lot nowadays in this generation because everybody's out in front of everything. Social media, it's very much sort of look at me kind of thing. So you don't get a whole lot of that. At least that's my perspective. I don't know.
And there is a lot of look at me. Here's what I'm doing. And it kind of gets inundated. So then I don't think you lack in anything. I actually think this is, again, one of your superpowers is being able to see somebody else and I think this is how you are a mentor to people. And I don't know if TJ, you can put it in the chat, but I think TJ would think of you as a friend, obviously, but I also think he would come to you if he needed advice, right? And Josh Ash is here too. And so I think he would be the same way. It's like, so it's a way you're bringing these people along. You're seeing them as equals, which I think is incredible for someone else that's newer into the industry, but it's also that you see what they can bring. And I just think that's like, I think that's kind of lacking in maybe our generation. We don't maybe look at somebody, because me and Joe are the same age. Of course, Joe thought he was a year older than himself for a year. Do you want to tell him that story?
Math, it happens.
Okay. So anyway, but I think that there's some great parts of the younger generations, but I also think you can't just be, do you remember when we were kids and it would be like 2 a.m. and there was nothing on TV? It was just static. And I mean, it wasn't infomercials like there are now. but it was just static. And sometimes I feel like some people, instead of putting out great content, they're just producing static. And they're still like, hey, look at my static, look at my static. And instead, it would be great if they weren't eating potato chip sandwiches and they were actually eating ham sandwiches, or, you know, something with a little meat. And so this is where you bringing people in makes you stronger, but it also makes them stronger. And I think that it's really such a golden part of who you are, because it's not just people who are professional and they're working and doing design like TJ or Fraser or anybody like that. You also have interns. So you haven't been completely alone. There's definitely projects that you work completely solely alone, but why has it been important for you to have an intern working with you?
Well, I look at it as, you know, I never had that opportunity. When I was their age, I never had the opportunity to go experience a working studio, to learn how you get from acquiring a job through to the final, you know, deliverables of that job. I never had that. So when I started working out, I mean, it was a lot of like learning on the job kind of a thing. And I think that if there's an opportunity to bring people in here, bring an intern into my office and just have them just observe, you know, if nothing else. Now, my interns are involved. I mean, they get jobs, they get projects, they get work, and they're involved. But to be able to sort of see how the whole thing works, you know, I just think that's really important. It's important to me because I never had that opportunity. I would have loved that opportunity. You know, I felt like I would have probably been further along out of the box if I had that opportunity. So I just see it as a way to, it'll sound corny, but a way to sort of give back, I guess. I don't know.
I totally think, but I think that that's one of your strong points is that, but you're also knowing, you know, that they can do it, and you're not just getting them to clean the desk or organize the books or, you know, getting coffee. They're actually, it's important that they do the work, but it takes time for you. This is actually, it is an effort to have an intern.
Oh, Diane, no doubt. I mean, it's more work than you think, actually, to be able to bring somebody. You would think that, okay, this person's going to come in, it's going to be an extra set of hands, it's going to be great, we'll be able to do much more. It doesn't work like that, because there's, first of all, you only have them for 8 weeks. All right. So, I mean, pretty much by the end of the 8 weeks, they're like ready to go, you know, it's just a lot of work, like sort of preparing their day for them, you know?
Exactly. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think sometimes people are, so when I've had an intern, I didn't realize these were kids in my classes. So I knew more than you did what they could do, but I had no idea how fast they were.
Yeah.
And so I also and they wanted to do really good like they would for me on a project. And so they would spend extra time, but I couldn't pay them for, I remember one girl, and I mean, I love this girl, but she did one of my clients is a doggy daycare. And it was a Father's Day gift or Father's Day certificate, like best dad, you know, she was like making a border around it. I had budgeted like, you know, I was going to bill the client like $27. I mean, I thought this would take like 15 minutes, you know, like nothing. $27 was, I still thought, a steal. Well, she took $40 because I was paying her $10 or $11 an hour. And I was like, wow, I just lost money on this gift certificate or this whatever. And I think for me, it taught me, they don't understand about time, because in school, time is how much time you have between now and Sunday or Monday when it's due. And I think that those were things I didn't know. And so now I have, hey, here's how much time I want you to track. And I give my kids time sheets sometimes in class, and I say, hey, feel free to track your time, because I think that they don't know how long, but they're learning, so it's going to take them longer. Anyway, what do you do with that? What's been like a key for having an intern for you?
Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
Like a tip. If you were telling somebody like Karina's here, and if she had an intern coming in, she's in Portland, and she said, okay, well, yeah, I like what Joe and Diane were talking about. I want to do an intern. I want to give back. But what would be a tip that you would tell Karina, like, so that her workflow doesn't get so messed up, or her
Yeah,
that
well,
the intern really helps.
yeah, I mean, depending upon how long you have the intern for, I mean, that's really the challenge because there is kind of an onboarding process where you really have to get them up to speed with your workflow, number one, and how they can best fit in there. So what I would do with my interns, and I don't, results may vary, I don't know, but with my interns is I would just kind of plan out their day to start. And I would say, I'm in my office very early in the morning. And I would say, okay, they're going to be here at 9. They're going to be here from 9 to 5. And I have this project, and that project. A lot of times they were things that were either very simple production style projects that I could kind of go through with them a little bit and just kind of wind them up and let them go. Or they were blue sky creative projects, which you can also just wind somebody up and just kind of like let them go for the day. But I think the most important part of it is to look at it like this is not, don't look at it as, oh my God, this intern is going to make my life easier and they're going to go get my dry cleaning and they're going to go walk the dog and they're going to go get coffee. And that kind of, don't look at it like that. Look at it as what can I leave this person with today? Like what can I give them that's going to be valuable to them down the road? So that's what I would always do.
So I love that. So it's really about, okay, so this goes into one of your other skills is listening. So you're actually seeing what their skills are, seeing how it would fit in and really utilizing them, but you wanting them to be better as they leave you.
Yeah, exactly. And I try to take every intern, and I've been good so far. Everybody has gone to some sort of client meeting. So they'll come with me to initial presentation of a project, or depending upon where we are in my schedule, they'll come to me with an initial discovery session with a client. Or they'll come with me on a pitch to a client. And I think that those are valuable things too, because they know how this works. And my clients love it. They love when you bring an intern with you. My last intern went with me to New York City to the Jackie Robinson Foundation, which Jackie Robinson Foundation is all about education. So, to have them there and sort of see how we present initial concepts and how we do it, it's just, to me, that's just really, really valuable. That's more valuable than, coming in here in the office and, working on whatever, just going out to those things.
I agree completely. So another thing that is, you and I talked about was soft skills and how being good at reading people. So as you go into an initial presentation or as you go into a discovery meeting with a client, you're reading people. And this is an incredible skill. Do you think you've always had that skill?
I think it's one of those things that you either have it or you don't. I think that there's some things you can teach. I don't know if you can teach personality, and I think that's a lot of what it is. I think good soft skills in a meeting, whether it's if you're pitching a job or whether you are initial discovery or whatever the case may be, the power of likability, I think, is really important, and I think if people, if people feel comfortable with you, they feel like, okay, this is going to be a 6-month, 8-month project. I don't know what this is. Oh, I'm not going to get that. That's just going to ring for a little bit, okay? So if this is like a 6-month or an 8-month project or a 10-month project, whatever it is, am I going to be able to stomach this person for that amount of time? And I think that's important. Am I going to be able to spend this kind of time with this person? So I think that soft skills, being able to communicate, personality, likability, all of those things are really, really important if you're out there on your own, if you're running your own business.
Absolutely. Okay, so at what point did you decide, hey, David, I want to work back, let's be a 2-man team? Because this seems like a shift. So you were living in New York for how many years?
I was in New York for almost 5 years here.
Okay, so then you moved back to Philly or back to Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so kind of paint that picture of what was going on and how, because again, he has different skill sets than you, right?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Similar, complementary, I'd probably say, skill sets, and just really kind of transform the way that we do everything. Because here's the thing as far as I'm concerned. It's like you can run the business, all right, and then you can change hats, and then you can go over and do the creative, all right. But if you're doing them both at the same time, you're not going to do each of them extremely well at a very high level. So what David has done is he's running the business on the day-to-day, client maintenance and proposals and pitching jobs and all of that sort of stuff. And then
like project management.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That too. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And then I'm over here on the other side. Sorry, that was just that phone call turned into a text. Sorry about that.
So you're on the other side. David's running the business. What are you doing?
So I'm working on the creative, basically, and I'm working on just the design of and managing our freelancers and other folks that are in on those projects. And what I found is that you don't have to switch gears. You can sort of stay in the zone, and I think you get things done better at a much higher level when you're kind of like separation of church and state.
So what was the impetus of, like, did you just talk to him? Was he at a point in his career that he wanted to go out on his own, or he wanted to?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. I mean, he was at a point in his career where he was looking for another opportunity. He wanted to do something different, and David called me and said, let's get together for lunch. So David lives in Greenwich, Connecticut, Old Greenwich, Connecticut. So between Old Greenwich, Connecticut and where I was living at the time, the middle ground was like central New Jersey. So we met at this diner in like Hackettstown, New Jersey. And we sat down at this diner and just started to talk about how this whole thing was going to come together. And my first response to him was, wait, you want to come here and do these things? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I was thrilled is probably too soft of a word. Because man, it's like I didn't want to do that kind of stuff, Because
that wasn't fun to you, right? But you'd done it.
It wasn't. Not only was it not fun, is that I was competent at it and I could get it done, but I wasn't like really good at it, And I wanted to be really good at it. So,
Well, so I feel like it was like a honing. You're getting even closer to doing what. So how has this industry? So you were having to wear both hats for so many years, so like 15 years.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So you're wearing both hats, and now you're able to just kind of focus in. And is it? How does a kind of small industry, niche industry? It's kind of ballsy, like I said earlier. That's an okay word in the Gibbs household. So, because we don't cuss. So anyway, my mom probably is like, I don't think that's a good word, but anyway. So you have this. So you go out on your own, and then you also have this niche universities, sports. It is a small industry.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't think you're crazy, but it sounds a little bit like, hey, I'm going to go do things with diapers. That's all I'm going to do is diapers. And it just sounds like, whoa, can you make enough money? Are you going to be waiting tables on the side?
Right.
And so, but it's also, if I was in diapers, that sounds bad. Anyway, if I was in a specific industry, I might get bored after 20 years. How has this industry kept you invigorated? I actually feel like you've gotten even more excited about certain things as well. So how do you keep it fresh?
Yeah. Well, even though I'm hyper focused, I've said before, I'm in a cubby hole inside of a niche, is really because I'm an identity designer and an identity designer in sports. And what keeps it fresh for me is that every project is different. Every need is different. Yes, the end result in regards to brand identity is essentially the same. You have certain components that are often repeated throughout brand identity in regards to primary logos and secondary logos and word marks and those sorts of things. But every project is different. Every circumstance is different. The client's goals are different.
Mm.
So to me, that's what keeps it fresh. I just get so excited when I go on a new college campus, right? And I've been on, 100 of them. But when I go to a new one, and it's just to sort of see the differences that are there, and to see sort of like what makes that place different than the 1,600 other colleges and universities in the country, and then kind of like prospecting those nuggets of uniqueness, and then being able to apply them back in design. I think it's just, yes, it's the same industry. Yes, it's the same business, but every project is different. Every day is different.
So you talked to me about how you come in, and I think this is your strength, is that you are able to come in as a sponge, completely empty, ready to get filled up. Yeah. I think this is really hard for a lot of people, and I actually feel like the longer you go and experience, you could be like, no, this is what you need. They're coming to you because you're an expert, because you've done this and you do this so well. But how do you maintain that sponge, like childlike creativity or curiosity to be able to ask the right questions and experience the right things when you're talking to either, I don't know what the owner of a team, I don't know who you would talk to at a team level, or if you're talking to like the marketing department at a university or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't go in with any preconceived notions ever, because I don't pretend to know anything about their business. I don't pretend to know their pain points. I don't pretend to know like what's best for them. So I try to go in to all of these things with just a complete open mind to all of this, and really just kind of looking for those things that make them different than everybody else. But I think it's important to walk into a room with the understanding that you don't know anything about any of them. So like one of the things I always like to do on college campuses is take admissions tours. Which always looks stupid because I'm the 45-year-old guy on the admissions tour, and there's all these 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids on the admissions tour, and I always have to explain, okay, I'm here because of this, and that's why it's not weird. Don't get weird. But I love doing those things, because you get really kind of that. The job of the tour guides on admissions tours is to tell you why this school is better than the 15 other schools you're going to apply to, right? And to me, I think that's just like a great perspective on to get a really good sense of kind of the different nature of this place, what makes it different from everybody else, But if you start going in with at least in my experience, if you start going in with very specific ideas on what somebody should or shouldn't do, it'll lead you to a solution, but it might not be the right solution.
So do you do research about the university before you go in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, we know basically, as much as you can without being there,
right.
As much as you can without being there, because what you learn from the about page on a college or your university's website and what you learn when you're actually there are two different things.
Absolutely. Do you try to go on, like if it was when you're doing a school that maybe doesn't have a football team maybe, and they have other athletics, or are you trying to go during a time when that thing is happening so you get a feel? Or
absolutely. Yeah, it's sometimes you can control that, sometimes you can't, depending. Sometimes a project will start in the summertime and there's nothing going on.
Right.
But if there's a marquee sport that particular program has, yeah, absolutely, I would love to take it in. David and I were in Colorado Springs recently. We're doing a job at Colorado College, a project at Colorado College, and they have a standout, excellent men's hockey program. the school is Division III, but their men's hockey program and their women's soccer program play Division I. So the two stellar athletic programs. So we went out there, and it just so happened that it worked out that it was a night that they were going to have a hockey game. And of course, absolutely, definitely want to experience that, because I want to see how what their on-field, on-court presence looks like. You know, not only in what physically what they look like, but what in the game presentation makes it different.
Right. All right. So I got to ask you this because, and I'm going to share this so that people can see. So my parents went to Georgia, and you did the University of Georgia logo, which they love, and it's beautiful. And the arches are incredible. So if you're at the University of Georgia and you've graduated, you are able to walk under the arches. If you are a undergrad, you are not able to walk under the arches. If you are a kid of a graduate, you are not. I have never walked under those arches. So I think, you know, using that piece, you might not have known that had even, I don't know if you knew that before you went there, but you definitely know that if you talk to an alumni or you talk to somebody else. So you knew that there was this cornerstone of the university. Mm-hmm. When you're going in, I realized this was sized incorrectly. I'm so sorry. It's like really tight to the edges. I noticed that early, and I was like, what is wrong with that? Anyway, I should have found the different one. But anyway, so you're going in. I mean, you'd have Mississippi State too. And then we're going to get to that. So the Mississippi State's a great example. You have to envision this being used small, you know, on a pin, on a hat, and then also on the side of their, you know, wherever, their Coliseum or whatever this is.
Yeah.
So this can be huge, a huge issue. How are you able to, is it just through discovery? And how long are these discovery sessions? Do these last, do you go for one meeting and then you go back, or is it different with every client?
No, I mean, our discovery sessions are usually a couple of days, 1 or 2 days. You know, usually if it's one day, it's an all day affair. And we meet with all different sorts of constituents from that school, that university, that team, whatever the case may be. And we just ask really specific questions about, you know, who they are, and really kind of dig down into the essence of that place, you know. And every single one ends up being a little bit different. I mean, some of the questions we ask are a little bit different. You learn an awful lot when you go into those sessions. A couple of projects you just showed there at Georgia, for example. You know, Georgia had this Power G logo.
Like Green Bay. It was very similar kind of to a Green Bay G.
Yeah, right, exactly. And we can go on for hours on that story, but they had this very, very powerful athletic logo. And on the institutional side, they sort of wanted something like that was equally as powerful. Now, their options were to adopt that Power G logo and utilize that university-wide, and that would have been fine. But they still felt like there was a distinction between getting fired up on a Saturday afternoon for a football game and this Institute of Higher Education. So what we did for them is we developed a logo that was, you'll notice the color balance in that logo was really similar to the Power G, and the boldness of how that was drawn was sort of comparable to the Power G to be able to give them that. Well, I mean, we wouldn't know that without engaging in those conversations and talking to lots of people and kind of getting their perception of, oh, well, this symbol is really important to you. Why is this symbol important to you, the athletic G? And then how can we sort of translate that over to an institutional logo?
So Mike,
I'm sorry, I was going to say that Mississippi State logo is actually an interesting mark. That's the word mark to that project. And I presented that logo as part of my initial presentation. It was very similar to that. It wasn't really, I don't think it was different at all. And they didn't like it. But I loved it. And I knew that it was going to be something that could really be an important piece of their identity. So in the second round of presentations, I just put it back in. And they still didn't like it, but they didn't like it a little bit less. And then eventually it just kind of, I think they just got sick of me putting it back in there. That kind of it was adopted on the logo sheet. And that picture where it's on the back of the scoreboard, that was the first application of it. Those letters were like 12 feet tall. So, And now, if you look at every Mississippi State uniform,
Oh yeah.
they wear that ribbon.
I see that all the time because it's very near, people drive from there, from here to go to those games. So Michael has a question. Michael's in sports as well. He's in Houston. He says, on average, how long does it take to complete a university athletic rebrand?
Well,
probably different, but.
Yeah, they're all different. Yeah, they're all different. And what we usually do is we usually have a finish line in place. Now that could be the start of a fall semester. That could be a homecoming game, or that could be at the end of the school year. So we always try to sort of put our timing towards whatever that end goal is. But it's usually anywhere from 6 to 8 months, typical for us. Now we have had projects that from start to finish have been a little bit longer, but those tend to be things that are a little bit more involved. For example, we did a couple of years ago, reimagined all 90 NCAA championships across 23 sports and 3 divisions. So that's a bigger project. That was well over a year in design alone. Forget about the research and the testing and all of those things. It was a very lengthy project. But for typical athletic identity in the collegiate level, anywhere from that 6 to 8 months usually.
All right. So Naomi had a question a little bit ago, and we have like 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure. So thinking about more early Joe, 28-year-old, 25-year-old, she said, okay, so if you didn't estimate and you're really doing it time-based based on your hourly rate at this point, did you update your invoice if you worked more than you had estimated?
No, I never did.
You always ate that cost as learning.
Yeah, sure. Well, I wouldn't say it as learning. I just didn't have I felt like if you give somebody a cost proposal, that's a contract, and I did it, I did it.
So I think that's important to I think relationships in a small industry are really, really important. And you've been able to, this is a way of building trust. And this is one reason people continue to trust you. They continue to give your name to other people of somebody to work with because, and I think it's good to start out as doing that from the get-go. So if you miss, it's always good to have a cushion, I think, even when you're starting, when you're early, maybe you do a range like from $300 to $500 instead of, then that way you have a little bit of a buffer. I don't know if you did that early on.
No, I think that people want to know. When it comes to pricing a project, people want to know what it's going to cost. And I tried to be fairly specific. I didn't always get it right. There are plenty of times I got it wrong. And when I got it wrong, I got it spectacularly wrong. But
I think Naomi's in that same spot right now.
Yeah, but that's sort of the progression of it, right? You're going to learn. You're going to learn from those things, and you learn a lot more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about kind of what's next because I have a ton more questions, but not enough time. So I want to talk about the Alliance Football League, and I'm going to pull this up, and because this is something that's you've never done, and why is this so fun to you?
Well, it's first of all, it's I've never done a project like this before in my life. Not only is the scope of the project just massive. So
tell people, because people might not know what this is.
Well, the Alliance of American Football is a brand new football league started on February 9th, and it's 8 teams that play in 8 different markets across the country, and they have a 10-game season, starts the weekend after the Super Bowl, and it ends the weekend before the draft, the NFL draft. And when I started this project, I was in very early in this project on the ground floor. So when we started, we really didn't have anything. The league didn't have anything, didn't have any visual identity whatsoever. And we started off with developing the league identity, which was a project in and of itself. And then after that, developing all 8 teams in the Alliance. So their logos, their helmets, their uniforms, their what the field looks like.
And the referees' outfits or uniforms or whatever.
Uniforms, yeah, which our first week was a little rough because they were sublimated a little bit low, so it looked like they were wearing bulletproof vests, but we fixed that. And then and, you know, and the championship and the trophy and all those sorts of things. So what's been really fun for me and really really interesting about the whole thing is that it's this immersive design experience where you're involved in everything. You know, talking to the industrial designers that are going to kind of take your sketch and create this trophy, for example. You know, talking to uniform suppliers and learning about their particular requirements and some of the limitations that they may have in regards to colors and fabrics and all of those sorts of things. So being really involved in this at the very basic level from the get-go has been really fun. And to watch it sort of come out and, you know, be able to go out and watch a football game on a Sunday or on a Saturday and just see the whole thing in play. It's just really, really cool, you know? I've never done this where it's been an entire league's worth of brand identity at the league level, the team level, everything. In fact, I don't think there's that many people out there that have done something like this. So,
is it scary? Or is it just more exciting?
No, I don't think it's scary. I mean, I've done these projects before, you know, I've done team identity before, I've done league identity before, so I really relied on those experiences, but I just never did this many all at one shot. So I wasn't really scary. It was just a time management project.
We
started team identity, Diane. We started team identity, 8 teams in the second week of June. I was on vacation, and we started this right when I came back the second week of June, and we basically had all 8 team identities done and in the can by September.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. That's a sprint.
So I have a question. Did they pick their, like, they were going to be the Tennessee Titans or whatever? Did they pick that and they gave that to you, or were you on that side where, hey, people are going to be the Eagles, these people are going to be the whatevers?
Well, the naming process was ahead of the design, so obviously. So the design started in June, but well before that, we were talking about potential markets, and you know, we had no influence there. I mean, the markets are the markets where they're going to play. But we did identify, I think, 10 or 12 initial markets, and then did naming studies. So what if you're a team in Birmingham, Alabama, what are the unique, you know, nuggets of Birmingham?
Like the steel,
right,
Sloth's
like,
furnace or something.
Right, exactly. All of those sorts of things. What's the local economy like? I mean, what are the names that will resonate with those fans? So yeah, we started there, and then we compiled this list of names. We narrowed it down, and then when the names got narrowed down, we did mood boards. And the mood boards say, okay, with this name, these are the images that come to mind. With so that name,
you've been on the field the entire time, like from the get-go, naming everything. Wow.
Yeah. So it's been wild. And then from there, you know, we knew we were going to have 8 teams. We didn't know where those markets were going to be. So from there, then it was a matter of identifying color palettes. So we did 2 very comprehensive color studies on professional football, specifically the NFL, and what color palettes look like in the NFL, and then tried to identify 8 color palettes that would be not only as much as you can be unique to teams in the NFL, but also unique to each other. So that was, and plus there was all sorts of challenges in there. The uniform supplier only had a very specific type of fabric that we could get in time for our initial 8 teams. And it only came in whatever, 20 colors or whatever is what they had in stock. So you have to work with what really is on the surface, very basic color choices, but combine them in unique and different ways. So, for example, the team in San Antonio wears silver, red, and burgundy. Well, in isolation, each one of those colors is very ordinary. Collectively, when you put them together, it makes really kind of a unique color palette in sports. The team in Arizona wears bright yellow, green, like a forest green, and orange. Again, three relatively ordinary colors, easy to source, easy to match, but when you put them together in that combination, they feel really fresh. So it's just been an absolute blast. And I've never worked with a more with a better client in regards to respecting the creative process, to valuing creative. To a lot of clients, I haven't experienced this much in my career, a handful of times, but to some clients, design is a commodity. And they put very little value to that commodity, and that's why you have things like all of these like low cost design options out there, and people just figure they'll buy on price. This was great. This was a different kind of project in that they really valued the creative side of it.
Well, it's going to sell. It's going to make or break the league, I think, because it is the visual. I just think it's so interesting creating all this at once.
Yeah.
So difficult because usually a team they'll have some teams and then another team will add in,
Right. Exactly
it's
right.
not all at once. So I can only imagine that you have this whiteboard and then you're able to kind of think, okay, who lives where, who's going to be these really big rivals? Where are the rivalries already, and I would think that would kind of come into some of this as well. I mean, I love football, so
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Like, there's so many different factors that come into play when not only rivalries that you're trying to build between these teams, but rivalries that already exist within those cities. Sometimes you have to be aware of some of that so you're not kind of overlapping in certain places,
Yeah.
So it's challenging. And then on top of that, there was this underlying creative thought that these teams should align to some degree. I mean, this is an alliance. So there is some continuity and common thread between all of these teams. I've gotten Twitter criticism that, all of those teams, they look the same. And that's kind of the idea, The idea is that they would have this connective tissue between them, that they would all feel like they're coming from the same place. And that was an important consideration to the client. And so you're building 8 teams, but now you're building 8 teams inside of 8 teams. So you're trying to kind of create this whole connective piece. And it's been a blast, It's just been a blast. It's been so much fun. So
that's awesome.
That's what I did over my summer vacation. It's like you go back to school in September. What did you do over your summer vacation?
Right.
I built a football league. Yeah.
A really amazing. So I can't wait to see everything that you've done. So I want to ask a couple questions that I always ask. This will be kind of high end, but I loved this when we talked before. I loved this answer because I think we've painted a great picture of somebody with huge successes and just go after your dream or whatever, but it's not always been easy. And there have been times when you have not even, you enjoy sports and there have been times when you couldn't even watch something. Could you tell that story a little bit?
Yeah. It's, you get immersed in these projects, you live them, you sort of eat and breathe them. And there was a time in my career where, I would sit down and watch a college basketball game. I love college basketball. And I couldn't do it. I mean, I had to turn it off. It felt like work, it didn't feel like the diversion that sports really is for us as human beings, and it took me a while to kind of like get that love back, and it's I don't know what you call it, if you call it an anxiety or whatever, but it was definitely it was something that it took something that I love, that I've spent my whole life doing, and made it feel like real work, like real work. And it was uncomfortable, but I mean, that's I've been able to sort of get over a lot of that with.
How have you done that? Because I think this is a normal.
I think, you gotta, sometimes you just gotta ask for help, and like through the collaborations that I have, to be able to, in those times when you're not really feeling as creative as you should, or things aren't really hitting, just to be able to go out and ask for help. So I'll call a guy like TJ, and I'll say, TJ, I got this project, and I need some help, and he'll weigh in and help. My friend Fraser Davidson, just like a fantastic collaborator of mine for many years, and not only a great friend and just an overall solid human being, but I'll call him and say, hey, listen, I'm struggling with this project, and I'll send him a sketch, or I'll ask for his input or whatever. I'll ask him to help me round out a presentation. And to be able to get that help when you need it, I think is really, really important, because you can only beat your head against the wall so long,
And sometimes a fresh perspective is all you need, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So you may be a one-man, or for many years you were a one-man team, because you and David are a team now. David does all the yucky stuff, and you get to do all the fun stuff.
Well, we sort of share some of the yucky stuff.
I'm just playing them, but it paints a picture of, obviously he's really good at that. But you still have to create that. And Andre's here from Portugal, and he's kind of trying to create this creative group that can be people he can trust. And I think it's good to start small. I don't think that you're doing a ton. It's not trying to make it big. It's just trying to have really good quality relationships. Yeah. And you can do these things. You've done these by going to these sports conferences, and I know TJ goes. Yeah. So what would you give Andre as an example of something he could do in Portugal for trying to build a small team of people that he could trust and he could turn to when he's in that kind of yucky place?
I think, it sounds to me like he's already doing it. I think that you go and find people whose work you really like, really love, and connect with those people. Because if you're a fan, all right, if you're an admirer of the work that they do, it's gonna help that collaborative. You're gonna feel better about collaborating. You're gonna feel better about connecting with those folks, and you're gonna be confident in the advice or the wisdom that they give you. Designers, it's pretty easy. You can find designers whose work you really, really love, and you can say, you know what, that's a person I could ask some questions to, because they get it. They're doing what I want to do, and they can help you figure that out. So I think it's not like you have to kind of like find out about a person's personality, like cultivate a relationship and understand their personality. You can go to their Dribble page, or you can go to their website, and you can see their work, and you can say, okay, this is a person that I want to try to connect with.
Because there's already the respect of the work that they, right?
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. There's already that level of respect. Mm-hmm.
All right. So one last question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, my younger self, man.
Like the 25-year-old you that's starting. If you did have I actually feel like David's probably been in your life. Like he has had such a, effect. Maybe he's had some desert times, but and I think that's why you do what you do with the interns and other people, right? But what would you tell that if you were sitting across from him at that speed dating at the art directors club? What would you tell you?
I'd probably tell me to slow down. It's not a race. Life's not a race. It's not that you don't get extra points for finishing early. Just slow down. Don't be in such a hurry to hit these crazy imaginary goals, and just kind of like experience these things rather than having them experience you. Just kind of like, be part of it. Slow down. That's what I would tell myself. It's not
Okay, I lied. I'm going to ask one more question. So you've worked from home for many years. You're just recently, you and your wife have bought a building, and you're going to have another kind of form of income by renting out other parts of that building.
We're trying. Yeah,
Because
we're
it's
trying.
revitalization, right? Well,
We're
hey,
trying. Yeah. Yeah.
there's some
Yeah.
office space opening up in the where
Yes.
Joe lives.
Listen,
That's
listen,
right.
everybody, come work with me. Come work with me. It'll be fun. It's going to be a great space where what I really want to do is I really want to try to do it as more of a creative kind of space where there's an opportunity to bring others in that are just starting out, or folks that maybe need a little bit more mentoring, or need somebody there to kind of give them a little bit of guidance or advice on a daily basis. And that's really what that's all about. But you're right. I did work at home. I still work at home. I'm here for a really, really long time. Yeah.
So, and you talk about taking time, that you would take, hey, don't rush. So, but there's been some pros. You have 2 boys, and there's been some pros about you being at home, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Now, I do travel a lot because I'm still out seeing clients on a regular basis. So I do travel a lot. But what I love most about being here is that I'm not missing anything. My kids are 15 and 17, and I haven't missed anything. If there's a sporting event, I'm there. If there was a band concert, I was there. If there were homework questions, I'm here. I just feel like I feel really, really lucky in that regard, is that I haven't missed too much of their growing up.
Well, and I think that that's a huge, that advice, I think you're telling yourself to slow down. I think that this is one thing that you've always done. You've kept your family really priority, and you've been able to kind of flex in your schedule when you had meetings, or when you had to leave, or when you had to go somewhere, so that so that you could be present. Because if your wife is working, then if the kids are sick, then you're still working, but at least you can kind of let them be in front of the TV or something, or in bed asleep, and you're there. And so it hasn't been, a lot of people say, oh, well, you're just working in your house, and I think a lot of people have that, but you're saving so much money on the upfront cost of having an office space.
No, I get that. I mean, I get all of that, and when I started this thing, I thought, well, this will just be temporary, right? Where I'll just be here in a home office temporarily, and then eventually I'll get that office space and I'll be out, So my wife and I, when we got married, we lived in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. We moved up here about 10 years ago when my kids were young, to sort of get them closer to grandparents. And this is the town I grew up in, actually. And the town she grew up in too, interestingly enough. That's another story entirely. But we moved back here to get our kids closer to grandparents, closer to aunts and uncles, all of those sorts of things. And when we moved back, we did buy a building for her practice, and it was a 2-story, small little office building. And my plan was, well, we would renovate the second floor at some point, and I would move my office into there, and then I'll get this office space. And we ended up having somebody out of the blue knock on her door, come into her office and say, hey, do you have any room for rent? I want to rent an office. So we rented the second floor to that person, and I'm still here at home. But we do have plans. I mean, my goal here is to ultimately do, that's David, actually. My goal here is to do in town, is to create a space where I can have my office, but again, a place where people can come in and start a creative business and have that support system in place, and have the resources that they need to be able to do it, Because
that's a con, is that you're working alone, and that the creative, if you are creating, that's why you're creating a creative space, where a co-working space where people could have, because that can be really, you can feel very alone and only with your ideas. And sometimes you can just hit a wall a lot of times when you're working alone.
So yeah, totally. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much for all your time. And I would just want to make sure that everybody knows how to follow you and to reach out, give your web address. So you guys can follow Joe at Joe, Joe, Bosack, BOSACK.com. So joebosack.com, or you can follow him on Instagram. These are all below wherever, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on iTunes or whatever, all these links are below at Instagram.com/Joe, JOEBOCO. So, Joe, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I am very thankful that you came on, and so many people, Jeremy Slagle says you do amazing work, and thank you. And Crew says, thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Diane, we've been talking about doing this for like years.
I think it was my first Creative South. I think that was 2014. And I asked you then. And it's just, but it's perfect because the Alliance League wouldn't have happened. So we wouldn't have been able to talk about that.
Cool.
So always happens for the right reason.
Thanks, Diane. It's been fun.
Thank you so much. And guys, I'll see you next week. It's a rapid recharge, and you can always follow the show and support it at patreon.com and get a free Audible book and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/designrecharge. Thanks, Joe, and thanks, y'all, and have a great day.
See y'all.
Hey, I just wanted to tell you about a couple of ways you can support the channel, the show, and the podcast. One, you can get extra content delivered to you to patrons only by going to patreon.com/Diane Gibbs. And then my favorite way to build websites has changed a little bit recently. I am now using the Elementor plugin with the Divi theme. The Elementor plugin works with almost any theme. It makes almost any theme invincible. This plugin has changed the way that I've been able to design websites. It was allowing me to work at such a faster speed where other plugins fell short. Now I don't need that. I just need Elementor. You go to bit.ly/dr Elementor. My favorite theme, of course, which I've told you about before, is the Divi theme. It gives you complete control. I purchased the lifetime plan, which was $250. I believe that's the same price it is now. And you can, for the lifetime, you never have to pay a renewal fee every year, which it's about, I think, $80. It is based off of a grid system. And now I need one theme and I can do custom sites. And it allows me to use strategy and customize for their needs instead of trying to adjust a theme that already exists. And the last thing that I love that I use every day is Audible. Audible has changed my business and has changed my life. I listen to more books than I physically read nowadays. I listen when I work out, when I mow, when I have a long commute. These are all affiliate links. So that means if you click on the link and purchase an item, I will receive an affiliate commission. So that's it. Those are ways to support the show. Thanks.